When I was a kid, there was a book which I believe was called Physician, Heal Thyself. And I remember being very struck by that. Um, and it came up again this week in a really big in a really big way. I don't always know why things arise, but they do. And I felt I needed to somehow address it and perhaps share it with all of you. Um, we're all used to being healed by somebody else. All of us. We all go to doctors, we go to healers, we go to teachers, we go everywhere to be directed, to be helped, to be cured, calmed. But there does come a time when there's nobody else there, just you. And you either have a skill set in place or you flounder around in desperation. And the great thing about the idea of healing is its source. The healing source is not a pill, it's not a shot, it's not something outside you, although definitely it helps. The ultimate healing source, even that which directs people to mechanisms that heal, is within you. And we have a very odd culture. Our entire culture is outer directed. It is completely about the materialized forms of nature and reality, but it's only half of the equation. The other half of the equation, which our culture does not address at all, other than maybe through certain religious principles, but the other half of our cultural equation is, and worldly equation, is inside. It's within. And hardly anybody is being told that. We're not getting that in school. We're not getting it other than maybe in churches and temples where people say pray and ask and stuff, but it's still reaching for something to be part of this larger state that we live in, to try to make it more comfortable, easier, sweeter, gentler, whatever we're looking for. But it's all about the outer, and it's all about addressing the outer and making it more in the image that we would like it to be. But there is, as you all know because you're here, this extraordinary inner landscape, which in fact is probably much bigger, much vaster, much more infinite and eternal than this temporary little space that we all inhabit. We live on the earth. It came into being and will go out of being. We are little creatures on the earth that go like that. Come in, go out. Like nothing. And we don't look at it that way because we have this incredible sense of, oh my God, I'm here. I exist. I am part of this remarkable drama of life. And it's so comforting and exciting and scary and amazing that we get addicted to the outer form and we lose touch, if we ever had touch, with this unbelievably simple, comforting awareness, knowing, source element, godlike truth that inhabits us, that is at the core of who and what we are. And if you don't have that, the imbalance and the disequilibrium of your life will be dramatic. It will be really hard. And the fact that this journey is so fast won't even begin to dawn on you until you reach the age of those of us here in this room who have done that and out there. You know, you get to a certain point and you go, boy, this is happening really fast. This is like going to be like that. And it's very shocking, even though you know it, even though you've been told it from the beginning. The fact that this goes like that is really remarkable. And the journey through all of this for most people is a kind of chaos. We journey through here trying to figure it out, what we're doing here, where to go, how we're supposed to live, how we're supposed to have a life. And usually in the recent times anyway, life has been relatively accommodating. It's giving you, you get up, you have breakfast, you go to work, you come home, you have a meal, you watch TV, you have a structural life that is very predictable, easy. Usually there's nobody attacking the town you live in or trying to kill you in your house. Usually you're having, the biggest problem is a leak in the ceiling or whatever it is that may be going on. But most of our lives are relatively calm, centered, gentle, and maybe even sweet. For some people, that's not true. The early programming was difficult. And that was not my situation, so I'll say they have to work through the fact that life was not giving them very much what they needed to set them up for this journey. So the whole journey is really figuring it out, and figuring it out from the outside, which does not give you enough information. Because what can you get from the outside that will make you feel whole, joyful, comfortable, contented, and embraced by life? What will do that? Well, so I give you the answer that I give you every week. There's a journey inward. And if you are lucky enough to stumble on it or seek it out or have a hunger for it or get to be aware that it's a possibility, it's transformative, it is evolutionary, it is the very thing that gives you a kind of substantial reason for being. And if you can find your way into that space, what happens is you are really alive. You are alive in ways you may never have understood if you lived in the chaos of an unfulfilled, unsatisfying existence. I know that existence is not necessarily going to sort of come up to your level of expectation. It rarely does. It will always cause chaos. It will always cause difficulties and struggles, but to some degree, it doesn't necessarily cause struggle in the sense of embattlement, of going to war, going into hiding, or all these various things that we see starting to emerge more around us. Our lives don't create that. Our lives tend not to give us that much. And so there's not a lot of stimulation into going into the oceanic part of our existence, because why? But when things get tough, which they are doing right now, people are going, oh, whoa, 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 and they're trying to find some kind of solution to how do I deal with the disorderly, chaotic reality that I actually was born into, and which luckily formed a kind of easy passageway for most of our lives, but now is starting to get unraveled. If you're getting to a certain age, that's happening because that's how it happens to every human being. It unravels, sometimes in a disturbing way, sometimes in a wonderful way. Like, oh, it's gone, unraveled. I don't need it anymore. The tensions are gone. Sometimes it's, but that's who I am. You struggle with this horrible kind of conflict of holding on to the thing you don't even want. And it's really painful to watch. And then there are times like the times we're in, where the unraveling is happening on a much bigger scale. How big it is, I'll use a very disturbing word, how apocalyptic it is, I don't know. But something is going on, and we are all being touched by it. Especially if you look at a headline on the newspaper or read the news or watch the news, you go, ooh, this isn't good. This is weird. I don't like this. We're not personally right now all that impacted by it, but we are seeing more and more people expressing concern. And again, I tend to look at headlines more than I look at stories in the world, but I'm starting to see thinkers, important thinkers, worrying about our lives, worrying about what to do, how's this going to unfold. I mean, kind of scary headlines, that I think any of us who look at them and embrace them at all, which, I'm a dramatist, I've always been a Hollywood type person. you give me drama and it will kick in. I just watch all this as like, wow, this is not these are seed forms for a very difficult ride for all of us, and we're going to need help. We're all going to need help. Is the way I look at it. It's funny. I've had a number of projects come to me. A year ago, I wanted to write a movie called 2024. And I wanted to show a movie about pretty much all the things that are starting to apparently be happening in our world, in our country. You know, pretty dark forces unleashed around us. Darkness in terms of our comfort, our survival, all of these different things. And if you look at them unraveling, they're really happening. And my feeling when I was going to write this movie, which was going to be, forgive me if I'm getting too specific, but in the election of an authoritarian figure who decided to go against all of the people we tend to watch, like the newscasters and the people who comment on the news, and people who bring talk shows in the evening who were kind of oppositional figures, and watching them, in a sense, be eliminated. And I was going to follow one person, one late night host, finding his way through a world in which he was now an enemy of the state. I looked at that movie and I thought this would be really powerful. And if I got it written and I got it out there in time for the coming election, it would stimulate people to be activated and motivated to choose the right things. And then I thought about it and I thought it may do actually the opposite. It may stimulate people to just follow the drama that I had created and live it out excitedly. So I just said, shut up, be quiet, you don't do anything. And I didn't. But I am actually watching the newscasts and I'm reading newspapers, and they are as everything I would have written happening around me right now. So I have a certain fear or concern about the future. And I know I don't want to sit here and share fears and fear about the future, because that's not what a meditation teacher does. It's not what somebody tries to do. On the other hand, this line that came, physician, heal yourself, became a really important element in dealing with what's going on. I would love to say that we can keep classes going and we can sit around and have meditations and we can share the joy and the bliss and the simplicity and the whatever comfort of collective energy and awareness and love and joy, which is something that's remarkable. And it may also not be allowed at some point. It may actually be forbidden and to have anything other than a certain kind of religious practice being allowed in our culture. And I'm not trying to get paranoid. I'm actually trying to be somewhat real. But what I'm really trying to get at is this is our work. We can do it together for as long as we can do it together. But if it ever happens that we can't do it together, you have to be able to do it on your own. It's absolutely essential. What that means is you have to go into yourself using Rudy's dictum of going to your heart, asking for help to surrender, asking for help with the understanding that there is help. Now, one of the great things about Rudy's teaching is that he did eyes open meditation and he transferred energy from teacher to student. That was not his energy. It was a collective, if you will, universal energy that he had reached into and harnessed through deep suffering in his childhood. He had connected to this space. He had found through his teachers how to manifest it and look at people and send it out. This energy is a real energy, but it is not unlike love. It's not unlike looking at somebody and just loving them. And in the simplest terms, you can do that. None of us here is unable to look at somebody with love. That's not desire. It's love, care, compassion, empathy. It is feeling for another person. And Rudy tapped into that space and sent this energy which I always experienced as love, deep into my psyche. And it went into these places that were knotted and locked up and were frightened and saying no to the world. And it just started to let them breathe. It was an amazing thing that he did, an amazing thing. And he gave energy like no human being I've ever met. You all know my story, but the first time he looked at me in class, I fell on the floor. I'd never had that experience before in my life, ever. Then he kept doing that, and I kept falling on the floor. So I sat on a pillow so I didn't have to fall out of my chair. And it happened all the time. And I didn't understand that energy, but it was very dynamic. I don't have that dynamism. I'm not a Rudy, but I got what was underneath Rudy's energy. And that started to arise in me through years of sitting and being really committed and devoted to what he was teaching. At one point, I asked him if I could teach, and he said, "You're not ready." I went, well, okay. And I accepted that. And then he died. And I was told originally, somewhere along the way, that when your teacher dies, if you're a student, you can take over, you can teach. But I had not been told I was ready. When I was living in the ashram in Indiana, and this is an interesting thing, I was a museum curator in New York. I had a very big life ahead of me. I wanted to be a Hollywood person, but I was established and comfortable. Rudy died, and I wanted to continue my studies. And so I chose an ashram that was forming in Indiana. And I went there, giving up everything I had that was secure and comfortable to work in a bakery, basically. And I had nothing. And I remember asking the head of the ashram at one point if I could teach, because I wanted him to say why I couldn't. Give me the specifics. No, you cannot teach because you don't do this. Whatever he would teach me and tell me so I could grow more. And what he said was really fascinating. He said, "Yes, start tonight." And and we had a lot of people in that ashram. And I said, "Well, okay, what do I do? Tell me how to be a teacher." He said, "You just sit there and you will figure it out." Which was like, I really didn't know what to do with that. But I sat in that class that night. It was a huge classroom for those of us who remember that space. I sat down on this chair, up elevated for whatever reason, so I could see everybody, I guess. And the class happened. I had nothing to do with it. It had nothing to do with me. It was everybody else out there needing it. And all I felt was, oh my God, I love these people. And this energy loved them. And it wanted to go to every person in the room with enormous force, with enormous power, because it needed to be and wanted to be transformative, to undo all the crazy wiring that each person brought to this space. And it flowed. And now I've been doing this for 50 years, sitting here doing this. There is zero ownership. There's zero ownership, because one of the things that has come to me over all this time is it's not you. It's this other thing. It's this vast thing, which I love. I don't understand it. I can't tell you, I can give it a name or anything. Rudy called it the guys upstairs. People call it source and God and all these things. This thing just comes through, not, as I've said many times, for me, but to share, to put out there. And it wants to have access to the world. Not that it doesn't. It's always accessing us. But most of us are so locked up in our personality, in our egoism, in our craziness, in our day-to-day stuff, that we don't get it. It can't make its way through. It tries. It really does try every day for every human being. But most of the time, the human beings are so powerful and potent that they just deny it. They push it away. They don't want it to come in, even though that's all they want, really. So having a teacher, having somebody become a hose to water the garden is really, really helpful and important, I think, to all of us. So that is really an important thing to share with you, not that you don't all know it. But here's another element. Because I'm getting old, I started taking naps. not every day, but I lie down and I want to go into restorative space. I love naps when you just, and you feel 20 minutes later like a new person, you feel rested and calm. My naps don't work like that at all. I start to go into the little bit of a nap space. And I'm going, oh, this is good. And then the bottom drops off. I don't even know how to describe it. It's like an abyss. And I'm falling into this thing all the time within approximately 3-4 minutes. And then I have to deal with the horror and terror of this dropping into a kind of nothingness. And what I have discovered, because Rudy's voice comes to me immediately, is just do the work. So I lie there and I breathe and I open and I say yes and I lean into this experience. And even though it has a terrifying aspect to it, I just go, okay. And then it just starts to expand and nothingness becomes a cocoon. It's a support. And then I go, oh, okay, this is great. And then I'm there and it opens again into a whole other level of, oh my God. And I have to do it again. And what I keep hearing is, nobody else can do this for you. Nobody else. When you're in your nap state, your dream state, whatever it is in your life, and this thing starts to go away, you have to learn to open to the unknown, the emptiness, the falling into the abyss, whatever it may be. You have got to do it yourself. So the word, this phrase, physician, heal thyself, is really important, because there is nobody out there who can support me at that moment but my own practice. It's all I got, and it's all you have. And if anything should happen to me or to us or whatever it may be, you got probably the best thing you can possibly imagine, which is you. And you need to know that. You have yourself. And when I say yourself, I don't mean your ego personality, because that's not going to help you at all. Our ego personalities, I mean, oh my God. I've worked with enough of us over the course of 50 years to see that they're not our friends completely. They're not bad, but the real person, the real being, the self that will help you is infinite and eternal and present within you all the time, every minute. And if you don't know that and you don't feel that, and you try to come to class once a week to get a little taste of it, that's fine. But in the end, you need bigger muscle than that. You need to be able and ready at any given moment to go, hand yourself over to this much greater thing. It is absolutely available. It has been waiting for you the whole time. The problem is, if you haven't trained to do it, if you haven't practiced, if you haven't learned, if you're still holding on to all your crap, it won't work. It just won't be there. And so you'll be in this endless zone of whatever you go through until the very last second of your life. And then, we can all project what that second will be about. I have, from my movies like Jacob's Ladder, you have an idea that it's not an endpoint. It's another part of the journey. So, if you're going to go into another part of the journey, what do you go with? Do you go with your old mind, your old egocentric personality stuff? Well, probably. And is that going to serve you? No. It's not going to be your friend. It's going to be lost. It's going to be confused. It's going to be scared. It's going to be demanding a change. It's going to be saying, why me, God? It's going to be doing all this stuff. And all of that is the process. It's an unpleasant process for most people, but it's the unraveling of all of the stuff you haven't let go of in your journey so far. This sitting still, the healing of yourself, can be an enormously deep and profound handing yourself, excuse me, over to the self. Handing yourself over to yourself. You've never been separate from it. It's just your mind that's got this egoistic sense of power and empowerment, and that you have the right to be this or be that, and that if you don't have it, it's the world's against you, and all that crap that people have in their life. No, that will do nothing. The only thing that will work for you is find that source. Find that source. And if there's nobody around to help you do that, you got to do it yourself. And you all have the skill set, you all have the capacity, every one of you, to pull that off. If you don't feel that, work harder, sit more. Or, sorry to go back into my constant references, but if meditation isn't your skill set, and if you don't like meditating and you don't like stopping during the day, then I will give you the constant meditation, the thing that you can do all day long, which is alter your reactivity to the world. What does that mean? Stop being angry, disappointed, thinking you're right, thinking it should be your way, and just step back and be nice and kind to everyone around you and to yourself. That is the best practice for non-meditators that one can offer. Start being a nice person. And if you start to realize that you're not, or that you're argumentative, or that you want it your way, or like, what are you talking about? This is the way it should be. If you're living in that space, then you are creating drama and tension and knottedness that when you try to heal yourself, you're going to be caught up in the noise of your own chaos. The only thing you can do in the world outside of meditation and reaching inward to actually change the equation through meditative space is turn things around, react differently all day long. And if you have partners, they will become your best teacher. If you have a partner that causes you aggravation, annoyance, disturbance, and all that stuff, and pretty much everyone I know does, you have found the best teacher in your life, because all you have to do is turn it around over and over. Hopefully both people will do that, but that's not always the case. So what you have to do is find your mechanism for going, okay. And it's the act of surrender. It's the idea that Rudy teaches, surrender. Surrender to the moment, accept the moment, be kind in the moment, and your life will transform, and you will find that the need to heal yourself, the physician that needs to heal himself has to do it moment to moment with the people around them, whoever's around you, period. And it's a great practice. It's a great work. So we have two things. One of them is sit and do your meditation, go in, find yourself in that space of nurturing and love and joy that will lift you up and carry you through whatever you need to be carried through, or just start to be kind and good in the world and let the world change you and turn you into somebody that is really a much nicer version of yourself. The only thing, and I'll go back to the Bruce the dramatist thing, is, and I'm going to go back to that word apocalyptic, even though I find it disturbing. We are in a really difficult time. And I don't know where it's going, but it feels like people of good mind are getting scared and problematic. It's problematic. What do you do when life is getting that problematic, when it's starting to get that intrusive into your sense of well-being? Well, work harder. Work harder. Find a way of saying, I open to and love the world that I'm in, the people that are around me, and I understand that there is a vastness of darkness that moves around this world, as well as a vastness of light. And as I said a couple of weeks ago, quoting Rudy, when the world gets really dark, the light needs somewhere to go. So take it. You got it. But you got to go to where that is. You've got to find it. You've got to be that. And you have to share that with others and with yourself. Find the light and heal yourself. The light will be of healing for you, but you got to go to it. You've got to open the door to it. You have to make it available. If you don't do that, welcome to a big club, but it won't be fun. It will not be fun. So there's a lot of love pouring out for all of you, and a lot of, kind of stuff you probably don't want to hear. And I question myself whether I should try to bring in the dark side as well as everything else. But it's going to be noisier. It's just going to be noisier. And we all have to address the reality of our lives right now. And if we don't, you can play the game of, oh, I'm just transcendent and spiritual. I'm so fine and perfect. You can go there if you want, but it's fine. And, I don't know if you can notice my finger is completely bent. I just did something today and something fell on my finger and now it's completely out of kilter. and it really hurt. And I'm going to quote Daniel Subkoff, who I really think came up with one of the great lines in history. He said, when he smashed his finger in the taxi door, he said, 20 years of Buddhist practice went out the window. Trust me, pain and suffering are really challenges for the kinds of times that we are living in. And if you can be present and do the work, it will help you and it will help literally everybody around you. I think this is the lesson of the moment. I'm sorry to be a Hollywood writer who sees the drama, but I think I'm not alone. And if you see drama, try to make, if not a happy ending, at least an ending that has a poetic kind of okayness to it, a kind of awareness that goes, I get it, and feel the beauty of creation, even in the darkest of times. That's what we need to do. Okay, I'm done. As I say, questions. If does anybody have questions, and I have 2 screens here, so I may not be able to do it. Eric, I see you. Okay.
Oh, okay. So forgive me for being obsessed with my own story, but what do you think about, okay, like when you give your talk and it addresses something that has been so current in my life, and so like I said, it feels kind of superficial and stupid considering all of the very serious things that are going on, but okay, a couple weeks ago you mentioned that everything has a season, and right now it's the season of colds and flus, and I'm focusing on learning how to take care of my immune system. And I've been told, I watched this guy on YouTube who keeps saying, Hippocrates said, if you're not your own doctor, you're a fool. He keeps saying this. And then today you say, you got to be your own doctor. And I'm like, and this happens all the time. Almost every time you give a talk, there's a theme that you didn't bring up the theme. The theme was already there. So I just want to know what you think about that. It's like so mysterious to me.
It's a real doorway into truth. And I had that with Rudy all the time. He always spoke about what was exactly happening in my life. In the realm of coincidence, which is a kind of spiritual space, is a really important wake up to what is happening in the world. When there are coincidental things happening, take a look and see what's going on, because it's talking to you. You have been addressed by things that are really remarkable, and you need to go thank you and just follow the directions, because that's what you've been given. And I live with that. I live with it every day. I have amazing coincidence all the time, and all I can say is I just go thank you. That's what I do, and you should. I know you do, but just go there. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. No more to say.
Okay, Eric Jacobs.
Hi. What finger did you hurt?
My little finger. Are you going to try to get
That's interesting. Here's a coincidence. I'm okay. I have a boo-boo too. Crushed pretty bad in a clamp for about 30 seconds. But it's fine. The tendon's fine, the nerve's fine. And basically the clamp slipped while I was banging on this rocket assembly that we're harvesting for metallic value. But it's interesting. Yeah, just keeping a mudra really helped. And of course,
I don't have guidance on this, honestly. I appreciate that you have the same issues.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to go on about this. This is not my question.
Okay.
You talk about going into the inside, and it's been a question for a while. Getting my kids to begin that process rather than an outer process that is involved in some video, some games, obviously playing a lot of art, sports, which is great. It's a pretty good mix. But of course, myself modeling that, which is, I definitely model quite a bit for them in many ways. Do you have any brief words of
Yeah, a brief.
input?
I would love my grandchildren, of course, to begin a spiritual life. But what I do is I model that life. And I don't know what else to do. I can't sit down and give them the exercise. Rudy said, don't give this to anybody under 18 for whatever reason. So I talk about it, but I don't give it to them. And they understand that I sit and they understand what I do, but they don't have a deep connection to it yet. But they do know there is a kind of meditative element to my life that is important. And that's what you can do. And you can let them, as they grow up, look toward that and then begin to ask questions, which they will. And hopefully you'll be around still to be able to talk to them about it. And maybe if the time is required, give them the exercise.
Any idea why Rudy said don't give this to anybody under 18? And is that still relevant?
Well, at that point in time, I think he felt that kids are not ready to embody this kind of practice and are still working on too many other things in their life. So I think that I don't know always if what Rudy gave me would have stayed true to this day because things have changed in the world, but I'm following that. If you feel instinctive and an opening happens and they're sitting there one day and you want to share some of this with them and it feels right, well, I would trust that coincidence.
In the moment.
Yeah.
In the moment. Okay.
But mostly I wouldn't push it on them.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, come on in here. I got to talk to you.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Okay.
Anybody else? Will.
Let's see if my sound is on. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Bruce, you've mentioned that when you first met Rudy and you first started to interact with the ashram was, and that was before I obviously was there or interacted, that it was also a very tumultuous social and political time. And if you think about it, there was civil rights, there was the Vietnam War, there was protests all the time, there was a corrupt government and everything. And I'm just wondering what your insights might be about what it was like to do meditation in that moment. And also, did Rudy say anything about it? Or
yeah, very specifically. I had gone to a protest after I was with Rudy. And Dean Rusk was talking at the Hilton Hotel in New York. And I was trying to turn over a police car with a whole group of people. And all these policemen on horseback came with clubs. And I just missed losing my hand. They came down on the side of the car. They crushed the car, part of it, and I pulled my hand out. And I went to Rudy to tell him what happened. He said, don't go to those. Do not be part of the protests. He said, do your work, do your inner work. You don't have to be part of or engage that outer thing because I would lose my hand or my finger, So all I can tell you is the world is so much with us, and I can do things like vote. I can express at the kindest version of it. It's my interpretation of what's going on. And I can live accordingly. I have to live more and more internally now because my emotive life, my empathetic life is so powerful that all I have to do is see one picture of a little child in the newspaper and my heart is breaking. It's just breaking and breaking. And I go, I have to be very sensitive to that. I can only handle so much breaking. So I think we have to live our lives, live quietly. And I think Rudy totally supported that. Be the source, be the thing you want to see. Be the light instead of the darkness. You have to find that, but you don't have to go out into battle mode unless it comes to your house. And then that's a whole other story. But at this point, we're not in that, but we are in a time where change is going to be hitting us more directly than we've ever known it before, ever. And it's going to be, we have to be prepared internally to respond to that, however we can, mostly through kindness as best as you can bring it out, and love wherever you can show it. Does that help?
Yeah.
George?
It's a silly question, but how does this time really any bit different than 1917, 1938?
George is asking, how is this time different than any of like the beginning of World War II or the darknesses that happened in our world? I don't know that it is.
Well, we seem to evolve and dissolve.
Yes, that's a good point. George is saying we evolve and dissolve, and we just, and there have been really tumultuous times in our world and in our culture. I was born, as some of us here were, in the middle of a world war, so it's not like it's completely new to the system, but we also lived in a time of unbelievable, unprecedented peace, even though there was Vietnam and there was upheaval, there's always stuff going on. And I am looking at some of what's evolving right at the moment as fearsome. On the other hand, yes, it may bring us into some kind of dialogue or exchange individually. It may not. It may pass right over us. I really don't know. But I do know that it is something that is knocking at the door. It may erupt, it may not erupt, but it should stimulate us to work harder and be deeper and to be more potent is the word, but more available to the moment. That's all I can say. The idea that the world has never been other, the thing that's being mentioned earlier was the idea that to everything there is a season. Absolutely. But the season of real darkness for most of us has never been quite as potential as it is right now. So we just have to be stronger and readier to handle whatever starts to come down, or more communal, to join together, to be a force of good for each other. I think that's important. But if we don't have togetherness, do the work. Anybody else? I think we're on one screen now. Okay, nobody else. Nobody else. Thank you for being here. Again, you've signed on to a certain kind of teaching and teacher. If this isn't your cup of tea, there are a lot of teachers out there who are just much more uplifting right now, I think, and very joyful, and it's all beautiful. And fine, go there if that's the teaching you want now. I would not, if you don't show up here, I do not have a problem with that. I can only express my particular version of it. So if it works for you, welcome back. If it doesn't work for you, I love you guys, and it's been great. Have a great week.